Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Warren, and I'm the founder and CEO of Vico. And I have a special guest with us today. He's a bit of an Amazon legend, and he's been in Amazon for over 20 years. He's worked in various teams around Amazon, FBA, FBM, Amazon Pay, always with sellers. His beard is nearly as famous as him. And I've seen pictures where when he first joined Amazon, he had no beard. And it's a great picture if you ask him to see it. This is Mark Griffis, Director of Fulfillment by Amazon. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I've known you for 4 years. For 3 of those years, you were my boss.
Yes.
So I'm going to enjoy asking you lots of questions.
I look forward to it.
Some you may not like, some you may like. So you led the acquisition of Vico, which was a lot of fun, right?
It was a lot of fun, a lot of work, and it really was a lot of fun. I learned a tremendous amount, and it was really fun to bring someone from outside Amazon into Amazon. It was great fun.
So before we jump into the session, we're going to dive into your Amazon career, but do you want to tell us a bit, what did you do before you joined Amazon?
Before I joined Amazon, I was going to school, and I was there when the first browser came out and the World Wide Web was invented.
A long time ago.
Long time ago. Unfortunately, now there's people that work for me that weren't born when that happened. You know, it makes me earn my gray hair. But I started building web pages, and I started working at a startup in San Francisco, and I was there for 7 or 8 years, and then moved up to Seattle, and then came over to Amazon in 2005.
Amazing. So let's jump into it. Before we had Prime delivery, before 2-day delivery was like expected, if we zoom all the way back to 2006, sellers were shipping their own orders. And then FBA was born. And at a time, a really bold and big idea, which has probably now had a big impact on e-commerce. Do you want to kick us off with, how did that come about?
Sure, and I'll take an opportunity to correct the slide. I am not the founder of FBA. No more than Steve Jobs was the inventor of the iPad or something. He may have had an idea, but it always takes a team and an army of people. When I joined in 2005, there were 3 people working on FBA. 2 of them quit within 3 or 4 months. And so they always, called me the oldest person in FBA because I was the oldest person in FBA. But we quickly grew a team and got hard to work. And it took an entire team to pull off FBA. And it definitely was built on the backs of giants. It wouldn't have worked if by then Amazon already hadn't had a really good fulfillment network. It wouldn't have worked over the years if Amazon hadn't continued to build out that network, and it wouldn't work if Amazon didn't have the store and the listings and everything else. But the way it started was Jeff Bezos had a very strong conviction that fulfillment was a really important kind of feature of Amazon that we had really focused on for delivery. And you've heard the famous customers care about 3 things: price, convenience, and selection. Convenience is represented with the speed. And so he wanted to open up Amazon's warehouses, and he was very, very insistent on that being a self-service thing. You shouldn't have to talk to anybody. You should be able to sign up in the middle of the night if you wanted to, put together a box of stuff, send it to our warehouse, and it should be able to get received. And so when I joined, the product manager had an Excel spreadsheet that was like 40 pages long of all the things that we needed to do to make it happen. And the most important thing we did is we cut a bunch of that stuff initially and focused on just the basics of what it would take to get it. Make an inbound shipment, enable it to get received in the warehouse, make it show up on the website with inventory, make it buyable, and then be able to pay sellers. So we spent the first 6 months really trying to get the basics launched, and we launched in April of 2026.
And what was it like?
2006, sorry.
What was the first version like? Was it something you were proud of?
I mean, Yeah, very proud because it enabled something that had been done for Target but wasn't able to be done at scale. But an example, at the time, our self-service registration cut 35 tickets to 35 different teams, and they would have to go manually configure all the systems. Because when I went to them and said, look, we want to launch, they're like, well, how many sellers are you going to do? I'm like, well, we're going to start with 5. They're like, well, we're not going to prioritize doing this for 5 sellers. So I said, fine, we'll cut you a ticket, you go configure your systems, and eventually when the scale reaches enough, you'll automate it, and you'll give us an API, and we'll integrate it. So registration wasn't automated. You couldn't return any of your items. You didn't get paid if we lost any of your items. You had to call this guy named Chad Gelser on the phone to get your stuff returned to you. I don't even think we had an order report when we started that would show you what would sell, but we did pay you, and the stuff would get received at the warehouse. So, it was just the basics, just the things necessary to start the experiment, get the feedback. We actually, after we launched, we got about 15 sellers, and we paused it for a while to go fix some of these things and work on them. But I think that's one of Amazon's greatest attributes is we launch something, we make it work in an MVP or a lovable state, and then we just keep improving and keep improving and keep improving.
What happened to Chad?
Chad is vacationing in Europe right now.
Okay.
So, but eventually we did automate returns, and we eventually, all the operations things that you had to call Chad with were replaced by software and systems. So.
Tell me about the first FBA customer ever.
So we had a product manager at the time. His name was Joe Wolowski, and he went around trying to find beta customers. And ironically, one of the first customers that we found lives in the same town that I do, outside Seattle in Issaquah. And she was a bookseller. It was known as Grassroots Books. And her warehouse was in her garage outside of her house. And she had racks with books and listings and, a computer where she would download her order reports and print off labels. And so she was one of the first FBA sellers, one of the first 5, and we actually went to her house and helped label the books with labels so that we could receive them and put them in boxes and loaded them up. So it was really exciting to be kind of right there at the very, very beginning. And at the time, of course, we didn't know FBA would become as big and as successful as it was, but it's very exciting to look back on, and I'm very proud of the opportunity that I had to be involved in it. But a lot of that is just being in the right place at the right time.
Does she still sell now?
I think she still does sell, yes.
You still in touch with her?
Yes, she's still a seller, yes. She doesn't call me anymore. For the first 3 or 4 years, I was also support for FBA, so I would take all the calls from all the sellers.
Well, my next question was, what was your role in all of this?
So I was hired as a TPM, a technical program manager, somebody who kind of sits in between business or product and tech and kind of helps figure out how things should work and gets things done. And we had 3 TPMs. Chad, that I mentioned before, was in charge of operations. We had Deepika, who was in charge of the website and the user experience. And I was in charge of figuring out how to make ordering work and everything hook up to drop stuff down to the warehouse.
You told me a lot of stories about how Jeff was involved, and they're always fascinating. So maybe you could tell us a bit, what was it like working with Jeff?
Jeff was very intense, still is very intense, always definitely one of the very smartest people in the room. I think I quit my job on a Monday, started on a Tuesday, and I had my first Jeff meeting on a Thursday, so 2 days later. Because at the time, Jeff was meeting with the team every other week, and he was very insistent about speed and business matters. Let's get going. Let's get moving. When are we gonna launch? When are we gonna make progress? And so we met with Jeff very, very often. I remember, us presenting a slide deck to Jeff on how we should rename FBA for 45 minutes, and eventually we just said we're going to stick with FBA. So, but Jeff was involved, very, very involved. So,
what's the standout interaction with him?
I think his just unrelenting belief that this was a super important program for sellers. I mean, I remember initially when we were even penciling out a path to profitability. And Jeff was on the board doing math, right? So he just very much believed in the program, was very encouraging, and was just always there. I guess a small example, we did 5 sellers the first launch. We did, 15 kind of sellers in the first year. And then we had to set a goal. It's a very common thing in Amazon. You set goals every year. And, we're like, 15. We think, that's a big goal. Because you got to think big, right?
Uh-huh.
So we said 1,500. And Jeff came back and said, I want you guys to do 35,000. Now that was an example of Jeff setting really high standards, very lofty goals.
Yeah.
And we didn't hit 35,000 that next year, but part of the reason why Jeff emphasized that was you guys have to find ways to scale, find ways to make this self-service, find the ways to make this just easy from the get-go. And I think we're still trying to do that even today. I heard announcements yesterday about a more perfect inbound with visibility for FBA. And we've been working on inbound for FBA for 20 years. So.
Absolutely. You showed me a picture once of a bonfire on a beach with you, Jeff, and what was that?
So at the time when Amazon was a lot smaller, we would kind of have an annual conference called Up the River where the technical teams would get together and talk about what was working, what wasn't working, what were kind of the future trends that we needed to do. And so Jeff would come to those. Andy Jassy was at that, for example. Peter was also there. So there's just a lot of people that would come and meet with the tech teams. We weren't that big at the time, and so I got to go to that, and Jeff came and hung out around the fire and had beers with people and chatted.
And so when FBA started, I think there's about 6 or 7 of you in that team, and now there's...
I don't even know. I mean, I stopped working for FBA in 2014 or so. But yeah, when we started, again, there was 3, then there was 1, me, then they added Tom, and he added 3 or 4 more, and then just kept growing. We quickly learned that in order to help change all the systems at Amazon to accommodate FBA, we needed engineers, and so we started going and working in other people's code and changing it. And that became kind of a tradition at Amazon to not let any other teams hey, we don't have time, get in your way. If they didn't do it, you'd go in and help change their code to make it work.
Absolutely. Okay, so switching topics to how FBA has changed e-commerce. How has FBA reshaped e-commerce?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. We often talk to sellers and we ask them what they want. The product manager that I mentioned before, he had a box of tapes. I'd like to see if I could find those. They were interviews with sellers. And he went and asked 15 or 20 sellers if they wanted FBA or fulfillment, and they all said no. But the thing that was, I think, key is Amazon's insistence on building a really fast fulfillment network. And Prime and the Prime program really drove us to optimize speed and to continue to focus on getting faster and faster. At the time when we launched, Prime was just a 2-day program, but even then, if you ordered on Thursday, you didn't get it until Monday. And now you can order on Thursday at 10 a.m. and get it by 6 p.m. So Amazon's continued insistence and the fact that FBA sellers got to participate in the Prime program was a huge catalyst for the growth of Amazon generally and for FBA and sellers. You heard, if you went to the opening ceremony, or the general session, Dharmesh talk about $2.5 trillion in sales in the last 25 years with sellers. FBA also recently published that 80 billion units have been shipped through FBA. That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, that is insane.
And so that's an example of how I think Amazon has set the standard for first free shipping, then 2-day shipping, now sub-same-day shipping. And sellers have always been an important part of that journey, adding selection, participating in the Prime program, and you can see the results today with the conference we have, the number of sellers that are here, and the amazing businesses that have been created.
And what's that unlocked for sellers?
Well, I think it gives you access to, without, I don't think it's hubris to say a world-class fulfillment system with lots and lots of capabilities, lots and lots of robots. If you haven't gone and toured an Amazon warehouse, I encourage you to do so, because it's very amazing to go see the scale that Amazon's built.
And what kind of trends has emerged from all this?
Well, I mean, I think the rise of e-commerce with the enablement of anyone able to come up with a brand and a brand idea and test it out without a huge investment. I mean, it's a pretty amazing thing that you can come up with an idea, get registered for a product if it's a brand registry thing, take pictures of it, send it into the warehouse, and then immediately get access to millions of customers and shipping nationwide. It's an incredible opportunity.
Absolutely. And you've done FBA, you now are in FBM, you've seen the whole scope of what sellers and how fulfillment can work. I think most people here will be FBA pros, I imagine, and there's a lot of people here who also do FBM. How can sellers leverage both of these, and when is the right time to use both of those?
So one of the things that I've learned about sellers is they are economically rational people, right? They're out to build a business, sell product, and so I think every evaluation of what SKUs you list and what products you put in place are going to be based on what works for the seller and the goals that they have. If you have slow-moving, doesn't turn very often, very unique items that we really want on the store, those crazy carburetor for a 1976 Chevy Turbo, something or other. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon. That type of stuff is really important so that Amazon can be the everything store, but probably doesn't make sense in a Amazon warehouse as part of the FBA program. Things that are really big or heavy that take a lot of money to move around probably doesn't make sense for you to ship them multiple times. And so we really view sellers as sellers, not as FBA sellers or FBM sellers, but we know that you sell on Amazon. We know that you sell on multiple channels. We know that you sell sometimes and fulfill it through FBA and sometimes through FBM, and we want to make all of those experiences work well for you.
It makes a lot of sense. Do you have a Chevy Turbo? I don't know what that is, but...
Do you have a what?
Do you have a Chevy Turbo?
I don't. I have an electric car that doesn't even have a carburetor anymore. So.
Awesome. How have you seen FBM selling change over the years?
So I think one of the biggest changes that I've seen is just the rise of multi-channel, right? With Shopify, with Walmart, and I think Amazon really changing our perspective in a way that's very healthy of instead of just being focused on making sellers successful on Amazon, recognizing we need to make sellers successful no matter where they sell, right? If you go to Seller Central today, or maybe 6 months ago, you could only really do fulfillment from sales on Amazon. And that was one of the reasons why we went and acquired Vico, is because Vico integrates orders across multiple channels. And we're now working on integrating that environment into Seller Central, where you can be able to go to Seller Central and see all your orders and do fulfillment for all of your channels. And I think you'll see Amazon continue to pursue that because we recognize if we help you, no matter what you're doing with your business grow, you'll be more likely to continue to sell on Amazon.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the future of fulfillment. A topic me and you have talked about a lot, but what does it look like?
Well, I mean, you and I have talked about the biggest difference between sellers' warehouses and Amazon's warehouses is paper, right?
Yeah.
When you go into sellers' warehouses, there's a lot of paper used, and I think there's an opportunity. I mean, it doesn't make sense for probably every we'll see if we get there. I'm sure we will eventually. But it probably doesn't make sense now for sellers to put robots in their warehouses, right?
Really?
I mean, I think it takes a cost and a scale. Maybe you could repurpose one of those vacuum robots or something that can move small things around for you. But there's a lot of software and a lot of complexity there. But I think there's a big opportunity for sellers to shift to digital picking, digital tracking. That's one of the things that Vico definitely enables, and that's one of those things that I think we're going to continue to see be something that helps drive efficiency in the sales channels and sellers' warehouses.
So you don't see, like, obviously Amazon FCs are phenomenal, all the robots. You don't see that simplifying in the future?
I mean, I believe that Amazon is going to continue to focus on making fulfillment faster, more economical, and they're going to increase the amount of opportunity and selection. And so things today that may make sense for you to do fulfillment by your own may be something that you'll want to put in FBA in the future. Mm-hmm. But I think we're going to continue to see improvements in all of those avenues.
Yeah. How obviously AI has been a gigantic thing over the last 12 months. How do you see that factoring in?
I think AI is like every other technical revolution that we've seen in the past. It's about efficiency. There's a lot of focus on it replacing people. If it replaced everybody, I guess we could just let all the computers talk to each other and we could go to the beach or something.
Yep.
I don't think that's going to happen. So I think it's about making us more efficient. I think you've seen a lot of focus here about how Amazon's using AI to help sellers do a lot of the tasks that they find laborious today. And so I'm excited about the opportunity for people to be able to do their jobs and their functions easier through AI. And so I think it's exciting as a future.
What trends should sellers start preparing for?
I expect that AI is going to raise the bar of the playing field that exists for people that were able to have unique access or had prepared unique access as methods of analysis. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to raise the bar on everybody by enabling people to get better access to data, better access to pricing, better access to creativity and great looking products. I think though the thing that is always going to be true for customers is they are going to focus on authenticity. So you're going to be able to have the flashiest presentation, but if the product at the end of the day isn't high quality, isn't of good value, and doesn't get delivered when you say it's going to, I think people are not going to show up. So I think it's going to improve people's lives and enhance competition.
And do you think you'll also impact consumers and how they shop?
I think so. I think there's, I'm an old guy, right? I'm the old guy riding my horse downtown while the buggies are driving by, the new fanciful cars. And so I don't interact or operate with the internet in the same way that the younger generation do. And I think there's going to be a lot more embracing of searching and starting searches from AI. I think Google is already seeing this, right, with people using ChatGPT to search for products. And I think you'll see a lot more purchasing happening there. And Amazon is looking at ways to be able to integrate with that. And as we do that, we're going to open that up to sellers and enable that. But I think it will definitely change the way people shop today. So
yeah, and I think it's coming quite quickly as well. That's not going to be in 5 years' time.
Yeah, if the one thing we see with AI is that it's moving very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what one piece of advice would you give to sellers today as they think ahead for next year?
That's like
yeah, it's tough.
Who's your favorite child or something, right? It's like almost an impossible question.
You can give 2 pieces of advice.
I think as I talk to a lot of sellers, it seems that everyone is always looking for the next opportunity of what they can do to increase their sales.
Yep.
I think that multi-channels continue to be important, and I think if they can streamline their multi-channel efforts, that's going to be a rising tide that's going to benefit them on Amazon and in every place that they sell.
Yeah, I think so, and we're seeing that more and more now that sellers are every year selling on more and more channels.
Yeah.
And there are new channels being created every year.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like TikTok Shop wasn't here 2 years ago. Shein, Temu, all new.
Yep.
So yeah, exciting times, AI and more channels.